I had the VeggieTales album. I got it for Christmas one year. Which is weird because I didn't watch the show that much, so like that was a weird Christmas gift. The worst Christmas gift was the Kids Bop CD, and I was like,
Oh
please,
God.
please take this back. So I'll take VeggieTales music over Kids Bop any day.
Are you nostalgic, a parent, or perhaps a child at heart? When it comes to children's media, from books to TV shows, and even movies, there's often more than meets the eye. Is it well written? Does it still hold up today? What works and what doesn't? Or maybe you wonder what went on behind the scenes of that work. Together, a trio of adults who are also kids at heart will critique and comment on one piece of children's media each episode.
Hello, this is Eric.
Hi, I'm PJ.
And I'm Rico. You're listening to Beyond the Lens, a family-friendly podcast.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Lens. It's PJ here with Rico and Eric, and today we're going to be discussing quite an interesting show, one of my favorite shows as a kid. You may have heard of it. It's called VeggieTales, and the title basically speaks for itself. So, how familiar are you two with these talking vegetables and some fruits?
I would say decently familiar. I watched a few episodes every once in a while as a kid. It wasn't something I'm super familiar with, but I know Larry's the cucumber, and there's a bunch of random vegetables in there, so a bunch of random, and sometimes the plots focus on Jesus, and sometimes they don't.
Yep.
That's where I'm at.
That's pretty good.
Well, for me, I'm somewhat decently familiar with VeggieTales. I know when I was little, I was actually scared. I did not really like the animation style. Basically, as I got older, I sort of got into it more. So there's that.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about the animation too, because it was a little scary, and that is because VeggieTales was actually the very first program to use CGI. So some of the earlier episodes have like many glitches, and it's pretty funny, but yeah, also kind of creepy. Big Idea Productions is the company that developed the show, and the show is heavily revolved around Christianity, but has many references to pop culture and current events. VeggieTales was created by Phil Vischer and Mike Nawrocki. I can't pronounce last names. I'm so sorry if I butchered that. They both own Big Idea, and Mike himself provided many of the voices throughout the series. The idea for VeggieTales was thought of in the early 1990s when Phil was testing animation software to use for this children's program. But due to some limitations, he decided to avoid using or making characters with arms and legs and hair, because back then, of course, it was very difficult to animate. I'm kind of glad about this, actually, because the veggies and fruits with limbs just doesn't seem right to me, and it looks very unnatural. So yay for technology being crappy at the time. But yeah, Phil's first animation model was actually an anthropomorphic, there we go, candy bar. When his wife suggested that the parents might prefer a hero who promoted healthier eating habits, he began to design the characters based on fruits and vegetables. The cast of the actors of the early VeggieTales videos predominantly came from friends of Phil's. VeggieTales was initially released on VHS, but later on would be, of course, moved to the CD format. In all, Big Idea has released 56 VeggieTales episodes, including 6 Silly Song episodes, 6 Christmas specials, 2 Easter specials, 4 Larry Boy episodes, which, by the way, I'll explain when I talk about the characters in a sec. 2 Minnesota Cuke episodes. I have no idea what those are, but cool. 2 flashback episodes, and 1 drawing tutorial episode, which is also interesting. In addition to these episodes, 2 feature-length movies, Jonah, a VeggieTales movie, and The Pirates Who Don't Do Anything, were released in theaters. I actually remember seeing the Jonah one in theaters. I think that came out in like 2005 or something, and it became one of my favorite childhood movies also. The show itself ran from 1993 to 2015, and the only reason why the show was canceled was because Mike left Big Idea and it screwed everything up, and therefore Big Idea basically went downhill from there, and the team that worked on VeggieTales left. However, this news is very recent. In fact, last month, it was announced that Trinity Broadcasting Network was picking up the broadcasting rights to a new VeggieTales series to air on their networks. Phil confirmed on his Twitter that he and Mike were both returning to Big Idea as full-time staff to work on the series, tentatively titled The VeggieTales Show. And, in addition, there will be another VeggieTales movie that Universal Studios picked up, so this should be very interesting. I'm actually kind of looking forward to all of this because I took a glance at some of the newer episodes before the show got canceled for the first time. And even though I didn't really like the graphics because, of course, they change over time, the show still had the same formats. And, of course, the silly songs and everything else were still amazing. But, well, we'll see how this new series is, though. I'm still excited for it. As for the original show, as already mentioned, it's mostly centered around various Bible stories or recreations. You have episodes that feature stories like David and Goliath, the Walls of Jericho, and of course the Jonah movie. And as a kid, those things in particular really helped me understand the Bible as a kid, and I'm an adult now. I still struggle with understanding the Bible sometimes. So if I'm like super stuck, I'll just turn to VeggieTales and it all works out. Now, the two main characters are Bob the Tomato and Larry the Cucumber, who are actually both fruits, even though Larry is often mistaken as a pickle. They are the main hosts and appear in most of the episodes. There are various other supporting characters, such as Junior Asparagus, his parents, Archibald Asparagus, the French Peas, the Gourds. I mean, the list of supporting characters just goes on and on. But Bob and Larry pretty much run the show. Bob and Larry have different segments as well. Larry is most notably known, of course, for Silly Songs with Larry. Most of the songs from the show come from this segment. The silly songs are generally introduced with a title card and a voiceover saying, "And now it's time for Silly Songs with Larry," the part of the show where Larry comes out and sings a silly song. And some silly songs have alternate titles, such as Love Songs with Mr. Lunt, who is a supporting character on the show, or Ukulele Karaoke with Bob and things like that, where another character sings the song instead of Larry. The silly song, if one appears in an episode, is usually in the middle of the program, often at a cliffhanger moment or in between two stories. Each episode ends with another song. I don't know if there's a title for this song, but every time it plays, Bob hates it, and it's so funny. In fact, you know me and memes by now, but that's where one of the popular VeggieTales memes comes from. There's a meme of Bob angrily staring down at the ground, and it's taken from one of the episodes where he gets extra mad about the song playing before the program's signature send-off. "Remember, kids, God made you special, and he loves you very much." The episodes generally follow a standard format where they sing the theme song, open up the episode with a moral issue, while Bob and Larry are on their countertop. And they open it either through a viewer question or an issue brought up by Bob or Larry themselves, followed by one or more films that address the issue, and then the silly song if there is one, and then the ending sequence. Pretty simple. The show had like a standard format for most of the episodes. There was also an NBC format as well as the Netflix version, but I am not familiar with either format. I never really watched either two of those things, but I know that there were a few changes to both formats, and some people complained, but that's going to pretty much happen no matter what with a show, because as we learned throughout this entire broadcast series, people don't like change. But I love how they did the pop culture references in the earlier episodes. My favorite pop culture reference that they've done like ever is when Larry Jr., Mr. Lunt, and Jimmy Gourd make their own boy band called Boys in the Sink, and it's pretty much what it's referencing. Mainly the Backstreet Boys and another group called Boys in the Hood, although In the Sink kind of sounds like NSYNC, so I thought that was really clever if that was intentional, and if that wasn't intentional, oh man, that's amazing. But yeah, their song Belly Button was the song that got stuck in my head most of my childhood, and I remember being at a freaking Chuck E. Cheese's, and they had that song playing on the TVs, and looking back, that one moment in my life is like so nostalgic, and so is that song. So with that being said, I know you two aren't like super familiar with the show, but do you guys have any favorite songs from VeggieTales?
Oh, 100% is Everybody's Got a Water Buffalo.
Oh yeah.
And Where's My Hairbrush, which I sing literally all the time. And the ball jokes make no sense over a podcast, but I lost my hair in high school, and that is literally the song I sing all the time still.
For me, I'm trying to think. There was a Christmas themed silly song. I think was it involving pizza or something.
Oh no, was it the only one I can think of is the one with the cookies?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I forgot the title of that song and like how it goes, but yeah, that one's a pretty catchy one. I do remember though. Oh, but yeah, the hairbrush song. My dad, who actually is pretty much an atheist, he would let my sister and I watch the show, and he would sing the hairbrush song to us all the time, and like I thought that was super cool. But yeah, a lot of the songs from the show, like so many people love them, and they're still popular to this day. So that being said, this next topic / question I have is a little complex, but it is pretty important. As I mentioned already, my dad is not particularly religious, but he did let my sister and I watch the show as kids. But he also liked the show and would sing again some of the silly songs to us, mostly the hairbrush song. And that's like still stuck in my head to this day. So why do you think that the show sits well with so many people, even though they may not be particularly religious?
I think what's good about religious content shows for children is, regardless of the religious side of the content, knowing that it's based in a Christianity faith, it means that it's going to be wholesome and educational in some way, whether it's like life lessons or, character traits, and using the Bible stories as a plateau for that kind of those kinds of stories. What I think is also good is you have full-length feature films like Ten Commandments and Prince of Egypt and Ben-Hur and other religious big budget films, where you can take the idea of a religious concept and make it marketable to a larger audience. You don't necessarily have to connect with the religious side of it because it's a hero's journey, or there is some sort of character development and journey that you can follow on the other side of the religious content. So I think with VeggieTales, what's great is that the stories that you can tell with these characters don't necessarily have to be. They can be structured in a religious form of a story, but the lessons learned don't necessarily have to connect with the religious side of the content. So which then opens it up to more viewers, and for a parent's perspective, it makes it safe content for their kids to watch.
Yeah, and that's very true because, you can at least trust it and be like, well, there's not going to be any swearing. There's not going to be any, odd things that would question everything. So, I mean, why not, And I think that's why my dad kind of appreciated it.
I don't think Eric could have said it any better than I could. So, I think, right on. But one thing I will say is you previously mentioned the NBC version of the show. I know one of the changes that many parents did not like actually stemmed from the fact that in the earlier episodes that first aired on NBC, they actually edited out all the religious elements of the show.
Oh.
So, for example, I think one that comes to mind that was edited, which in my mind, I don't even know how this could work, is the one where they redid the story of the three men in the fiery furnace. They just cut out like the references to like, well, God didn't want them to bow down or whatever. Like, it's just the fact that the song was just morally wrong. But then again, one reason why it wouldn't work is like when they're thrown in the fiery furnace and they're saved, like that just happens.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting because it's like in that sort of case where God is like one of the primary things in that story, taking God out of the context doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, now I can see why a lot of parents would be upset about that.
Yeah, one thing that I will say though is that after there were several complaints, I forget which one of the two guys did it, but when it was brought to his attention, he was upset and said that he would not have agreed to allow NBC to air the episodes if he knew they were going to cut out the religious content. So in the later episodes, they kept the religious content in.
Yeah, because I can see why, like, someone would want to cut out religious content, but in this case with VeggieTales, since it is primarily a Christian-centered show, it doesn't make any sense to just change that entire format. So yeah, definitely, like, totally not right of NBC, but like, I'm glad that it's no longer aired on NBC if that's the case.
I find that, you know, we got into the discussion very briefly about JJ the Jet Plane. So with JJ, it's kind of interesting to see the flip perspective of that, where JJ originally aired in a non-religious form, and then later a religious narration was edited in. So it's weird to see both sides of that and the difference between both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because something like that where the show initially starts off one way, then you like completely change it with such a major topic like that, it just, either way, it doesn't really work. And that I've always found that odd.
Yeah.
But yeah, because the other thing is, even though VeggieTales is technically on hiatus now since it is coming back, it's still a very popular show. Like, my church has several VeggieTales CDs. They still play them at the kids' programs. The kids love it. They think it's great. I'm a happy camper. And it still boggles my mind that another thing with such, you know, a mature subject such as religion, as we've talked about in the Hunchback as well, it can be presented to children in this format. And I've always like wondered like how they did this and like how they put it all together and thought, okay, I think children would enjoy this. I don't know. That's one thing I really like about this show also.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going for the show. And I didn't realize there weren't that many episodes produced. Obviously, there are spin-off series and everything, and it's still continuing to do more things as of recent, like you were saying. So I'm interested to see what the new series is going to look like, too.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I thought there were way more episodes, too. I read it. I'm like, 56? It seems like there's been like 1,000.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I know, once again, you guys haven't really seen, like, everything, but do you have a favorite episode in particular that really stands out to you?
I remember watching the first episode. I don't remember what happens, but I distinctly remember sitting and watching the first episode. I remember more of the silly songs with Larry than I do anything.
To be honest.
I had the VeggieTales album. I got it for Christmas one year. Which is weird because I didn't watch the show that much, so like that was a weird Christmas gift. But anyways, here we are. That's where I got a lot of my content with VeggieTales, was from the music more than anything.
I mean, from the nostalgic side, I'd say Larry Boy and the Fib from Outer Space would be one that I really liked. But another one that's a little bit more recent is, in a second you're probably going to know why, the Christmas special that was released, I think in 2013, Mary, Larry, and the True Light of Christmas. I like that story too. I guess the main reason why I'm familiar with that one is because of the end credit song, which happens to be by my favorite artist of all time, Owl City, and it features
That's
Toby
right. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so funny because like I only found that song last year, and I'm like, wait a minute, Adam wrote a song for a VeggieTales thing, and like it was a collaboration with another Christian artist I really like called Toby Mac, and I was listening to it, I'm like, wow, this is actually really catchy, and that song in particular like got me. It's so funny because I go on like these sprees of like listening to all the VeggieTales songs, but that song in particular made me go back and listen to some of the newer VeggieTales songs. And I, like with anything new, I thought it was going to be, a little different. I thought it was like, I don't know, just not going to beat my expectations, but they were actually really good. And that gave me a little hope for the show, because it was going for like, over 20 years before it took this really long hiatus. So for a show to be going like that long and still like have this, at least the similar format, is what really surprised me. But yeah, it's just crazy to think that like all the newer songs are still good, and the show itself, even though the graphics have changed, of course, and that slightly bothers me. I mean, overall, it's still like great morals to the stories. Original, well, not completely original, you know what I mean? Like just an original way of presenting it. I don't know, it never gets old to me. And I think that's another reason why this show works so well.
There's a longevity, and like you said, while the graphics didn't hold up very well, it's still the entertainment value and the content can still carry to today. That's when you know a show can be successful, and how to measure it is if the content, regardless of how the animation or the physical sets and all that is presented, if the material within it is still either relevant or makes people entertained today, your show is successful.
Exactly. And even though they, recreate a lot of Bible stories, and it's, told in like a similar format, like the way that they present it is the unique part about the show. Like they take out obviously the mature like things of the stories, and they, present it in a way that only kids can understand, but it's still entertaining, and, the adults can follow it. Like even if I have difficulties with reading a regular Bible, like if I'm really stuck, like I said, just turn to VeggieTales and everything suddenly makes sense. So it's like, it's also easier to just watch it and remember. It's like, it's kind of similar to how a lot of movies today are, taken from books, kind of like I keep comparing this to Hunchback of Notre Dame, but it is kind of similar, where they take a book that may have been complex at first, and then they tone it down a little bit so people can understand. And I think that's another thing. There's so many things I appreciate about the show, but that's another one.
Something that really irritates me about a lot of religious shows is the fact that they're so toned down, because their Bible is like such a drastic difference than what's presented in VeggieTales. But
that's also true.
I like that they're able to take the big concept of the story and go, how do we present the concept of the lesson of what this Bible story is, in a sense of, cutting out the sexual content and the murders and all of that kind of stuff, and present it in a format for children to understand and be able to watch with families. And, as you grow older, this is that stepping stone of like, you have the beginner's Bible series, you have, your teen YA Bibles and all that kind of stuff. And you take the stepping stones to get up to like big boy Bible, I guess we're going to call it. Like,
yeah.
So I like that there's abilities to be able to build upon the thing before it.
Yeah, that's another thing I like too. But yeah, sometimes it can be a problem if it's toned down like too much, because then there's certain elements missing. And yeah, you just got to be really careful, I guess, with like how much you're toning it down. But I think VeggieTales did it to a point where it's like, okay, well, I get it. The like original story is obviously going to be more graphic and everything, but I think I understand like the most important parts about that story. But another thing that I really liked about the show too is that with any show, there's going to be some running gags and frequent segments. Obviously, my favorite was the silly songs, but I also loved the gag of Bob getting mad during the "What Have We Learned Today" segment. That still sticks in my head today. So while we're on that, do you guys remember any pop culture references that you liked, or did you have a favorite segment on the show?
Nothing that I can think of specifically off the top of my head.
Me either.
Tell us a few that you remember. I know you mentioned the NSYNC one.
Yeah, the boys in the sink. That was funny. And then there's the gag. There's a running gag where they break the fourth wall all the time. I don't really remember any ones that come to my mind, but I know that was frequent throughout the series. With one of the silly songs, there's a silly song called "The Song of the Cebu," where Larry sings about a Cebu, and Junior Asparagus, and like I think the two gourds were there, and during the song, or like near the end of it, because while the song is being played and Larry and the other guys are singing it, he's showing like a slideshow of all the pictures, so I guess the people can understand like the whole entire song and whatnot. But like midway through the slideshow, towards the end of it, there's like they cut the camera away from the slideshow to Larry, who's like, oh, well, this isn't supposed to be part of the slideshow. And so, and this one's the funniest too. It doesn't happen for very long. It only happens like throughout the course of 2 years of the show. So like I think 1997 and 1998, it was frequently mentioned throughout a lot of the episodes then. But like the characters would say, "Oh, you remember the Song of the Cebu incident where like you showed all those pictures?" And like I don't know, like I don't remember like a particular episode where, or I don't remember the context. That's what I read. I knew that was a popular one, as well as the running gag of Bob, Matt. But yeah, those are pretty much all the running gags that I could possibly think of. There are, I think, a few others, but those are the ones that stand out to me. And I just love running gags because, like, it's the one thing that keeps me entertained throughout an entire, like, show series, and I can follow it. I'm like, hey, I know, like, that little reference, and they do that all the time and stuff.
That's really nice. It's good when a show has references like that, too, to keep them... What's good... It's good and bad when they have pop culture references, because sometimes it dates the show. And then it's like, oof, like if a show does the dab now, like that really sets the timestamp of when that show took place.
A pop culture reference that I just thought of, it's sort of slight, but there's an episode I think called something like the Snoodles Tale or something, and apparently the whole story in the animation style is supposed to be reminiscent of Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, Dr. Seuss.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, Dr. Seuss is also a popular thing at my church. Like I've noticed that like the animated cartoon for Cat in the Hat has been popular in recent years, and like it seems like every church that I go to, there's like Dr. Seuss decorations and Cat in the Hat, and I'm like, okay, cool. I know Dr. Seuss.
It's another person that's like kept cultural relevance over time is the Seuss stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now's the part of the show where I run out of notes. Yay.
One thing that I'm like iffy about is food characters. This also goes into movies like Sausage Party, where they're anthropomorphic, food items. The issue being, am I supposed to feel bad if I'm eating the food items that the characters are? Because as a kid, if I watched VeggieTales a lot, I would be in the mindset of, like, I would not want to eat fruits and vegetables because I would be killing my favorite characters.
You know, I'm actually surprised that didn't come into my head as a kid.
This is just what I think of.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is, which something you've already mentioned, is like both tomatoes and cucumbers are fruits and not vegetables. So
oh, you're right.
The whole title is practically a lie.
It's VeggieTales, but the two main characters are fruits, because that makes sense. But I think another reason is because growing up, I remember now that I had like a plushie of Junior Asparagus, and I thought, oh, that's Junior Asparagus, not the actual fruit. So I'm like, yeah. And I think my sister had one of Bob the Tomato too, and that was always fun.
Bob the Tomato. Wrong show.
Oh, but all those silly songs were so catchy. Even the newer ones are still really good. And the theme song's catchy too. Like all of the music throughout this entire like series was just so good. I still listen to them.
Yeah, I sometimes have them play on the car too.
Yeah, because why not? I'm still a kid at heart. I don't care.
Yeah.
Oh, another episode that I just thought of is the one where they talk about Joshua and the wall at Jericho.
Oh, yep.
But what makes the story, I guess, stand out is that I think it's Larry, he's running late, and so it's Bob and Junior Asparagus, and so they're the ones that are telling the story as it shows up until the whole show plays out, and then at the very end, as they walk off camera, all of a sudden Larry comes in and says, "I'm ready to start the show," and the light turns off. Yeah.
I know that episode in particular was very interesting. I think this was from the same episode, but the part that stands out to me was I think the French peas were the ones guarding the wall, and they were guarding it with like purple slushies or something, and they were just like knocking them down. And I always thought that was an interesting way of like formatting it, because I don't remember like the original story. I don't know if it was like rocks they were throwing down or what, but I'm like, purple slushies? That's okay. I mean, if that's what you want to go for, cool. I'll take it.
Odd. Very odd.
VeggieTales was, and still is, certainly interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I was actually just talking, I was actually serving in the nursery at my church yesterday, and I was serving with a mom who had a kid there. She's like, I tried watching VeggieTales, and I just thought it was the weirdest show. Like, how do people grow up with the show? And I'm like, you have no idea. This was my show, and this is what I grew up with. So I thought it was all normal. Now when I look back on it as an adult, I'm like, how did I like, focus all the way through this? Because like some of the things are, yes, really insane, but it's also like it has a good message. So, I mean, it certainly is a one-of-a-kind show, and I think that's why I love it again so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of relevance to the show still, and I think that's why it still remains as popular as it is and has continued to be revitalized in various different ways.
Any final thoughts on the show?
I have a question.
Okay.
Oh, where is my hairbrush?
We still haven't found his hairbrush. Wait, no, we did. It's been a while.
Hey, I donated it to Goodwill. I feel like my theme song is more like, where is my wig brush?
Oh, there is one thing I did remember, though. We did never find out why Bob gets so angry during the last part. And I think that's going to forever be so funny to me. Why does he not like that song? We'll never know, I guess.
Never know.
I guess one thing that I can appreciate VeggieTales for, and we sort of talked about this already, is like how they took the Bible stories and like got the message of what they wanted across while being able to change or skip over the more adult type themes and issues from those stories.
Yeah, this show is like, in fact, it might be the only show I know where, you know, they present the Bible stories the way they do to kids. And it definitely like influenced, I mean, my personal religious stance, I guess. But overall, it was just a very entertaining show. And it was so interesting to me as a kid. Just, it was one of the few shows that I liked watching over and over again. It's just been so long that I don't remember everything. But I remember it being one of my favorites, and I had all the VHS tapes. I had a lot of the CDs, and yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really have too much as far as the merchandise goes, other than that wonderful Grammy nominated CD, as I say. I don't think it was actually Grammy nominated.
It
was
should have been.
By Grammy nominated, I mean it was nominated by a bunch of grandmas.
After this, I'm probably going to go on another VeggieTales song spree just because.
Good.
All right, what are we discussing next time?
I think we're doing a pick by Eric. It's The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, Pooh Bear.
Everyone's favorite.
We'll probably start with that and then go into every Winnie the Pooh television adaptation ever.
And then we'll go into Disney again and just rant about other things.
Just rant.
Oh, that'll be exciting. All right, well, thank you all for tuning in, and look forward to our talk about the new adventures of Winnie the Pooh next time, and we'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Lens. The intro music is Work. That's W-E-R-Q by Kevin MacLeod. It is available under a Creative Commons Attribution License and can be downloaded for free at incompetech.com. Beyond the Lens is a Recore Entertainment production.
I don't remember, like, a particular episode or I don't remember the context. That's what I read. I knew that was a popular one, as well as the running gag of Bob, Matt. Am I the only one hearing that rustling? Is something wrong with someone's mic?
Can you hear me?
I hear like a bunch of rustling, like someone's moving papers or something.
That's my mom.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Mom.
Okay.